Hello, class. I'd like to start by thanking your teacher, Elena Romao, for inviting me to come and speak with you today. And I'd like to thank you for the marvelous questions that you sent me. And I hope I do justice in answering them for you. So we're going to start now. A quick review of the story. First of all, you know that my mother, Hala, and my father, Ignash, met and married in 1935. As they were going back from Poland, where they were married, to Belgium, where they were going to live, the Nuremberg laws went into effect. Beginning today, the Jews are no longer citizens of Germany. And you see Hitler and the swastika. In 1938, my sister Yvonne was born. And in 1939, Germany invaded Poland. Now, one of the questions, we're getting to a question. What do you think about your family leaving Belgium for Portugal in the first place? Was it a good or bad idea? Well, let's just take a look at what it looked like when Germany invaded Poland.
September 1st, 1939, the weather perfect for mechanized warfare, Hitler unleashed his blitzkrieg. Our strength is in our quickness and in our brutality, he screamed. Be hard, be without mercy.
So in 1939, within a few days, Hitler overtook the whole Polish army, and my mother's family, the Kaplan family, were trapped. So at that time, my parents decided to go to the coast because they believed that, like all the Belgian people, that the Maginot Line that had been built over there to protect them from Germany would keep them safe. So here they are waiting on the Belgian coast. On May the 10th, Hitler went west. And here's my mother speaking about what it was like.
So what made you decide to leave Belgium?
The Germans were on our back. They were taking over. In 3 days they took over Poland, and they were all at the Belgian borders. And so we had to go. We had to run. We didn't think we were going to stay long. We thought we'd go back,
And what was your route?
Oh, we went to France because that was summer, and we had a summer, we rented an apartment for the summer, in near the French border. So from there, we started to go and go and go, and the Germans were following. We saw the bombs, we saw the planes, and there was no more gas. People were breaking the pumps to get the gas. And
so every night when you stopped,
we slept in the car. We slept in the woods.
Now you'll see a visualization of what my mother was talking about.
En files interminables, les réfugiés continuent d'affluer sur les routes qui conduisent vers l'intérieur de la France. L'irruption soudaine des hordes hitlériennes leur a laissé à peine le temps de réunir les objets les plus précieux et les plus utiles. Ils fuient devant l'ennemi qui ne respecte ni la vieillesse ni l'enfance. Les troupeaux abandonnés sont réunis et placés sous la garde de l'intendance militaire. Poussés par l'effort et traqués par les avions ennemis, beaucoup de ces malheureux s'affalent sur le bord de la route.
So now my mother's going to speak about what it was like when she arrived in Bordeaux. You know, Bordeaux is where Sousa Mendes was the consul general. And this is what it was, her description of what it was like.
And then we had to move again. So when we arrived to a bigger city like Bordeaux, where there was a consulate, and because we saw there's no use to stay here and every day clean another house and sleep in another house. And
you couldn't stay in France.
No, it was they were moving too fast, the Germans, and so he went to that Bordeaux where there was a consulate, and there was a lot of people there banging at the doors, and everybody wanted to get in and get in. He was at the door, and when he had a chance, when there was nobody there, like for a minute or what, so he went in, and he asked them to stamp the passports, you know.
And this is what it looked like in Bordeaux. I don't know if you get the full picture of people, cars, trucks, everybody trying to get into Bordeaux or out of Bordeaux. It was a mess. Question was, what do I think about Salazar? Salazar, as you know, was the dictator of Portugal for many, many, many years. He was the one who instituted Circular 14, among other circulars, which said that all visa applicants had to be approved by Lisbon, but except for foreigners of indefinite or contested nationality, stateless Russians, Jews expelled from their countries, and so it was about almost everyone. These are Salazar's Boy Scouts. I imagine that some of you boys were in the Boy Scouts, and I imagine that you did not raise your hand in a Nazi salute, but Salazar's Boy Scouts did, because he was sympathetic to Hitler. So what do I think of him? He's an enemy of my people, the Jewish people, and the Russians, and the stateless people, refugees, enemy of refugees. You know, on the right, you see Sousa Mendes, and on the left, the Rabbi Kruger, with whom he had discussions and conversations. And when he offered Sousa Kruger visas for his personal family, defying the laws of Circular 14, Rabbi Kruger said, I cannot accept your kindness unless you let all my people go. It sounds biblical, doesn't it? This sent Sousa Mendes into isolation. They say 3 days, 3 nights of isolation, where he was contemplating what he was going to do. Because if he made moves to let all of Chaim Kruger's people go, it was sure to affect his family. It was sure to affect his whole future. Here's my mother again. What was it like on the road?
Visa to win.
To Portugal.
So from France, you went through Spain to Portugal?
Yes, yes, because we knew that in Spain there was poverty and there was no place for us to stay. And Portugal, that was the last stop. We couldn't go any further.
And this is the famous train station at Vilar Formoso. I hope that some of you have had a chance to go visit the museum there that honors Sousa Mendes and the refugees. If you do go, you'll see the little doll that Mr. Malafaya, you'll learn about it later, gave to my sister, because I dedicated and donated it to the museum. In any case, let's hear what my mother says about the reception she received in Portugal.
The people in Portugal were the best in the whole world. They were so and compassionate. They ask us to come in and feed us and sleep over and until you know where you're going and rest and take a shower or take a bath. Strange people, they were coming out with food.
So I think you understand that my feeling for the Portuguese people comes from my mother's feeling for the Portuguese people, what she told me, how she was treated, what it was like to be a refugee in Portugal. Here are my parents. You've seen this picture before in the book with other refugees where they went to the Cafe Europa, which I think is closed now, isn't it? It was closed when I was there the last time. I hope it's open. But maybe with COVID, who knows what's going on. They went every day to find out where they could get a visa, where they could go, but nobody, some people were able to leave. My parents had nowhere to go. Nobody wanted them. They had nobody to help them to get anywhere. Here you see my parents on Carnival Day in 1941. Of course, there was no parade, but Mr. Malafaia, the wonderful, wonderful man who adopted them, we could say, in Figueira, brought my sister, his daughters, Mignot, I hope I say it correctly, dress, which she wore as a costume for Carnival. And there, I think you know, the famous Farol de la Libertad, or Santa Catarina, actually, we call it. Now your website calls it Farol de Libertad. All the while, when my mother was in Figueira, she was sending food and packages to her family. And I bet you can even find the street, the exact apartment building that she lived in, number 10 of, I forgot the name of the street. It's not clear on here. Can you make it bigger? Rua Sotomayor. 10 Rua Sotomayor. Does anybody live near Sotomayor? Maybe you do. So this is the photo of them on the last day in Portugal. It was January 23rd in 1942. And Mr. Malafaia, you see him in the back there in the shadow, in back of my mother, went all the way with them to either, or maybe all the way to the port or to Caldas de Rainha. How did I say that one? Was it good? They were sent to a refugee camp. They thought they would be allowed to work. They thought a lot of things, but in the end, it was, I say refugee camp. Some people say internment camp. I don't want to be that rough, but if we enlarge the picture, and we look at the road, you'll see the fence. That is a fence with barbed wire. So make your own conclusions, please. As I described in the book, my father had a bicycle, a rusty old bicycle that he drove to his job. He got a job as a gym teacher, and he made a little seat for Yvonne on the back. They hit a bump in the road, perhaps, and she fell. Her foot maybe got trapped in the spokes, and they fell. Now, I don't know any of this from my mother because she absolutely never spoke about Yvonne, not in 1989 when these films were recorded, but in 1997, she did give me the photo album with all of Yvonne's pictures, starting in Belgium and and then going through Portugal and to this. She had never, ever spoken about it. And when I asked her, she gave me the letters from her family from the ghetto and the postcards. And I said, read them to me, Mommy, because I understood Polish because that was my first language at home. She said, no, I can't. So I got all the information I know about this part from 3 witnesses, young children who were there. And you saw that in the book too. You can read their testimony in the book. My parents arrived in the United States in 1943, in October of 43. And by May of 45, the war was over. My mother sent postcards to her grandparents who were trapped by the war. And this is the postcard that came back. Return to sender, addressee unknown. Nobody went back. And this is my family tree. I think it's your right, or in the box, in the black box, is the Kaplan family, my mother's family. My mother was saved, and I took her picture out of that family tree on the Kaplan side, and I put her with the Krakowiak family because that's how she was saved. But all my mother's family were murdered. Now, and here I am, 1 year old. I was born in 45, and here I am about 1 year old. And then on the right, you see the picture of my father holding me with my mother in front of him. Now, here's where I found out that I had a sister. I was 11 years old, and we were at a swimming pool in the mountains. And you know the story. A man looked at me and thought that I was my sister. And I said, how is it possible that he thought, and what are you talking about? And she had to tell me that there was a sister before me, and that my eyes so resembled hers that this man thought I was her, even though I was much, much younger, but he hadn't seen her for years and years. So the question is, what was it like to discover that you had a family, discovering you had a sister? How do you feel about not knowing what happened to part of your family? I feel that I was robbed. I was robbed of a sister. I was robbed of a loving family from my mother's side. I imagine that many of you, or most of you, have grandparents. I had one grandmother my father's father died in 1933 before the war. My father's mother was saved with my father. But when she came to America, she had tuberculosis. And so she went to a place, a home for people who were sick. And there's one little picture in the book of me with my grandmother. So I don't have no recollection of her. I did not grow up with a grandmother. I had no family on the other side. How do I feel? I feel robbed. You know, what were the worst parts for me? A student asked, what were the worst parts about the Holocaust for me? Well, for me, and for everyone, I imagine, it was the ghettos and the treatment that was received in the ghettos and the camps, the concentration camps, where Jews were burnt and where my family was burnt because they were in the Warsaw Ghetto. The inmates of the Warsaw Ghetto were brought to Treblinka, and everyone was cremated at Treblinka. A question here. How do you think Hitler led his country for so long? I can't even begin to think of an answer to that question. I don't know. What do I think of Goebbels, Hoss? And what would I say if I met Hitler, if I stood in front of Hitler? What would I say to him? Since this is an educational program, I cannot use the words that aptly describe what I would say to Hitler. So we're going to pass that question. Now, what do I think about the punishment applied? Were the punishments applied to the Nazis strong enough for the suffering inflicted on these people during the war period? Well, okay, there were the Nuremberg trials where 24 of the worst of the leaders of the Nazi party were tried and probably put to death, okay? Because that was something, in those days, capital punishment was still something that was done, you know? And then there was, those were the Nuremberg trials, and then there was Eichmann. Adolf Eichmann, the trial of Eichmann. Now, Adolf Eichmann escaped to South America, to Buenos Aires. The Israeli Mossad, the secret service of the, or intelligence of the Israeli, of Israel, found him in Buenos Aires, brought him back to Israel, and he, that was in May of 1960, and he had a trial, right? And then he was condemned to be hanged, and on June the 1st in 1962, he was hanged. Okay, so now we know about 25 Nazis who got a just punishment. And now what about all the others who were complicit? So how do I feel about the punishment? Maybe not enough people were punished. And then, what do you think we can do to promote peace and make sure that no more fascist politicians like Hitler rise to power? The only solution that I can think of is education. And once when I was in Portugal, I visited Carregal do Sal, the UNESCO school for Aristides de Sousa Mendes, and I gave a talk to all the students there who read my book just like you do. And you can see the teachers, Doris do Carmo on my right, and Josefa Reis on my left, and a wonderful, wonderful Portuguese woman who's a part of the Sousa Mendes Foundation, Mariana Abrantes. Now, I also spoke at the school, which is the Escola Secundaria de Bernardino Machado, and the lady you see me standing next to is the granddaughter of Alberto Malafaia. I have had the great pleasure of meeting and knowing the Malafaia family. I know Maria Luisa because I met her, and she showed me the original dress that her father gave to Yvonne for the carnival. And I have met Alberto Malafaia's grandson, who is named Alberto Malafaia, and they have a son named Alberto Malafaia, so they don't want to go too far from that name, which is a big, very honorable name. And the woman standing next to me with the red poster is Teresa Malafaia. So she's Maria Teresa, okay? And she's a teacher, an English teacher at the school that I mentioned. And I did speak at that school too. And I also had a very wonderful conference in the Figueira de Foz municipality. And on the lower left, you see me and my brother, Richard. He's wearing the sweater, the sort of brownish sweater. And you heard him in the interview in 1989, where I recorded my mother, because he was at the video camera and I was the interviewer. So that's my brother, Richard. And all those kids there are students who visit the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. So what am I trying to say here? Education is the way, the only way that I know of to prevent fascism. Why? Why do I say it? Because young people need to understand what happened. That's number one. So that's history. Education in good jobs, technical jobs, any kind of jobs. We need education so that young people have good jobs, can support their families well, and they don't need to get their minds crazy about the Jews who own everything, control everything, and this anti-Semitic tropes that fascist leaders rely upon to gather their strength. That's how I think we'll answer that problem. So now I have personal questions that were asked to me about writing this book. And here you see me, very, very young, in 1981, standing in back of my father with my arms on his shoulder. And to my father's left is my brother Richard. He's grown up too. And then my mother on the right, and my three children sitting next to around my mother. They had the fortune to know their grandmother. And she was a wonderful woman, my mother. In any case, the questions are these. did you maintain the original reasons for writing the book, or did your objectives change? Yes, my objectives changed. My original reasons for writing the book were a personal memoir for me and for my own family. When I met the Sousa Mendes Foundation, when I was introduced to the foundation and starting to go to Portugal, I understood that my story could be helpful as a testimony to what happened and the great acts of Sousa Mendes, which were virtually unknown until I think it was 1987 and the Carnation Revolution, right? You know much better than I do. So my objectives did change. And now another question was, so that's why I decided to share this story, right? And the question is here, nowadays, do people have any idea of what your family has been through? So with this book, they will have an idea of what my family and thousands of other families went through. So that's the purpose. We have many people who are giving testimony, going back to see where their parents lived before, many films, a lot of testimony. You know why it's so important? Because there are deniers, there are Holocaust deniers. There are people who say the Holocaust really didn't happen. It wasn't that bad. So we need to give the proof. Unfortunately, we need to give the proof. And the question is, what chapter of the book do I like the most? Well, the chapter of And the Skies Opened Up, because that's when my mother entered Portugal, and that's where she told me about the Portuguese people, and that's the chapter I like the best. The chapters I had the most trouble with were the bicycle with the accident. First of all, I had to make it up from the interviews that I got, and all the rest of it is testimony. I was just channeling my mother's story from the 1989 interview, but that the bicycle and all the rest, I had to make it up from, but not just from the sky, but from the testimony that I got from young children who were there. And what are my first impressions of the Portuguese people? I love the Portuguese people. I love your teacher, Elena. I love Doris. I love Josefa. I love Alberto Malafaia, Graça Malafaia, Teresa Malafaia. I even love the president of Portugal. Well, everybody loves the president of Portugal. And here's where I show off a little bit, because here we are reading my book in front of the panel at the Frontiera de Paz Museum. It's not the first time that he read my book, and it's not the first time that I met the president, because the Sousa Mendes Foundation's Journey on the Road to Freedom most often goes to the palace and has a reception with President Marcelo. But in this particular picture, I start reading to President Marcelo about the cards that say that the man from Gibraltar camp had to send back to the office in New York about my sister. I start reading, and he starts reading with me. I thought my blood stopped. It was a really fabulous moment for me. And the question here that I can answer with most sincerity and is that if I were to meet Sousa Mendes person to person, face to face, which I hope one day I will in heaven, I would tell him that I thank him. I thank him for saving my family. I thank him for disobeying inhumane orders. I thank him for caring about people, even more than his own family, to do something just. And let me know what you think of this video. Ciao. I love you. Bye.